Okay, we are almost done with this unit, and so far we have seen that the solving portion is the same as before. Unfortunately, again, many of us are missing questions because we're not paying attention to the inequality symbol. Remember, there are two situations that you have to look out for every time, and hopefully you're getting better at this because your test is next week, actually next Thursday, and you want to make sure you catch on to these because you don't want to miss. And what I'm probably going to do for your points is your sign is going to represent the majority of your answer, because you should already know how to solve since we had that unit our last unit was on solving. So I'm assuming that you know how to solve, so a majority of your points is going to be on your signs, and if you don't learn how to do the signs right, I'm going to take the majority of your points away. So be careful on that, especially even on this quiz coming up Thursday. You have a quiz Thursday on this, and if your sign is wrong, I am taking the majority of your points. Actually, I'm taking half of your points. So if you're no good with the signs, you're going to lose half of your points on all those questions and go from there. But whenever you switch sides with the X, so again, whenever X is on the wrong side and you move it to the correct side, the sign must switch. Also, whenever you have a negative number attached to X, which some of you still are refusing to do, and it's driving me nuts every time you miss a question and I say you divided by a -2 and missed it, switch your signs first and get it right. Stop missing those things for the same reason. That is the reason why I put that quote on my page that you look at almost every day when you go to see the video, which is the insanity is doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result. If you are continually missing this question, at some point you have to tell yourself to stop doing this, because you're just going to continue to miss the question. So you have to make an adjustment in your brain. The moment you choose to make the adjustment, everything else will work. Other than those situations, there should be no major issues. If there are, please get help soon, again, as your test is next week. Today we're going to look at compound inequalities. It's just a fancy way of saying there are two problems in one question. Just like if you learned in English, a compound sentence is two actual sentences with a comma in between them, combine them in together. They're simple to work with, but again, you need to pay attention to minimize your mistakes. Otherwise, bad things happen, of course. Compound inequalities either use and or to attach their inequality. It is not the major issue for the day, but it is important to note that each one has its own shape, and you might want to jot this down just in your notes real fast. It's not really allowed to write. And will look like this. Alright, it's going to be pretty much a circle over here, a circle over there, which we'll talk about in a second, and it's going to be the portion in the middle. Looks like a dumbbell. Or it's going to look like this, to where it's going to be no portion in the middle, but it's going to be two parts on both sides. And of course in algebra there are situations where it doesn't look exactly like that, but the majority of your ands are going to look like this right now. The majority of your ors are going to look like this. Again, one of them is going to shade in the middle, the other one is going to shade on the outside. So quick examples before you begin. Again, don't write these, just kind of follow along with what I'm talking about here. These are the questions that you're going to see today, and they're very easy to do. You're going to solve and graph them. And so 3 minus 2x is less than -5, or 4 is less than -2x. This or just simply means work this out by itself, work that out by itself, and put the two graphs together. So when we go to solve this, again, we will subtract 3 first. That has nothing to do with our switch, so -2x, keep the sign the same, -8. But this is again where most of you are missing it over and over and over. If I see a -2, instead of dividing by a negative, I'm going to switch the signs first, then divide, getting x is greater than 4. Or again means that there's just two questions in one. Here I see the -2, and so what I'm going to do again, instead of dividing, is I'm going to switch all the signs, then divide. Keep in mind you want your x on the correct side, so switch all your signs. Here's a second situation you're looking out for, and you get x is less than or equal to -2. When you go to graph this, your numbers need to be in order, which means the smaller one should be on the left. -2 is smaller, +4 is bigger. Notice if you go to +4, it's a open circle, and the arrow is pointing that way, which means that is the direction you will go. Notice that -2 is a closed circle because it has the equal to portion of it, and the arrow is pointing that way, which is why it looks like this. And as I told you, or usually looks kind of like that whenever you graph it. Not always, but it's kind of like a good guide for you to work through. Remember to ask questions and raise your hand if there's anything you're lost on. A second type of question you're going to see, this is actually an AND equation here, is that you'll see three things put down. And what we learned in algebra is that if I had 2x minus 1 equals 11, that if I add 1 to one side, I must add it to both. Well, the rule here now is if I have 2x minus 1 with a number over here and a number over there, is that yes, I will add 1 the same as usual, but there are now three sides to the equation, which means if I add 1 to the middle, I must add it to the right and the left. And that's really all you're doing here. You solve based off of what you know. I even tell people to cover up the other side so you know what to do. Here I would add 1 to both sides, which actually isn't both, it's all three sides. Negative 3 plus 1 makes negative 2. Sign stays the same. 2x comes down. 1 cancels. Sign stays the same. 13 plus 1 makes 14. Again, if you get stuck, cover it up and look at it as a regular question here. In order to get rid of this 2, I will divide by 2, but you must do it in the middle, the right, and the left. That becomes negative 1. Keep the sign. X. Keep the sign. 7. This means that x is in between negative 1 and 7, which means that negative 1 is over here, 7 is over there. Negative 1 relationship to x is a open circle. 7's relationship with x is an open circle. But because x is in the middle, remember I told you that this is the second type of graph you're going to see. That is where you're going to shade. Alright? So as you start taking notes, that's pretty much what we are looking at. So we've got five questions to look at, but like I said, these are quick, so just kind of make sure you get what's going on. Here you have negative 4 less than k plus 3 less than 8. First thing we'll do is subtract 3. Getting negative 7 less than k less than 5. K is alone now, so we graph. Remember to put the numbers in order. Open circle on 7, open circle on 5. K is in the middle, so we shade the middle. On question number 2, the first thing we learned was to get rid of the bottom number, and the way we get rid of the bottom number is by multiplying everything by that number. Of course here the 9's will cancel, because that's why we multiplied by 9, was to get rid of it. You end up with negative 27. Keep the symbol. 6 minus q. Keep the symbol. 36. 6 now must go. It's a positive 6, so what you will do is subtract 6 from all three sides. That becomes negative 33, negative q, and 30. Our problem now is that we have q as a negative q, which we don't want. So what we will do is switch every sign. The thing you have to be careful about is everything must switch. This becomes a positive 33. This sign flips over. Positive q. This sign flips over. Negative 30. And now notice that the negative number is over here, the small number is on the right, the bigger number is on the left. So what we literally have to do is take this thing and turn it over, kind of like a pizza. So we have to flip it over, which means bring your negative 30 over here. Turn the sign. This is our way of switching sides here. Turn the sign and put down your 33. Notice again, all we literally did was take this thing and turn it to face the other direction so that we could get it going in the right direction. So either way, when we go to graph this, negative 30 is over here, 33 is over here, negative 30 is an open circle, positive 33 is a closed circle, and q is in the middle, so we shade the middle. Number 3, again we've seen this. Or just means work out each one and put the graphs together. So working this out, we will add 1 and divide by 6, getting our first answer. We do the same thing on the second one. We just solve it. Again, there's nothing different going on. It's just a matter of making sure you know what you're doing. Then we divide by 2, getting b is greater than 2. The only thing that happens is now we have to make sure our graph is right. Negative 1 over here is a open circle pointing to the left, which means it's going that way. 2 is a open circle pointing to the right, which means we go this way, and that is your graph. Number 4, 7 minus c less than 1, 4c less than or equal to 12. First thing we do is we move the 7 by subtracting it. We don't like the negative c, so we switch signs, which means again everything must switch, ending up with c equal to 6. Over here we divide both sides by 4, getting c is less than or equal to 3. When you go to graph it, make sure you don't put the numbers in how you see them, but in order from smallest to greatest, from least to greatest. 3 should be over here, 6 should be over there. 6 is an open circle pointing to the right. 3 is a closed circle pointing to the left, and that is all you need to do. Alright. And the last thing that you'll be asked to do is to draw or write an inequality that goes with the picture. One question might even give you something like this, to where you know you're going to have, first off, you're going to have the numbers set up the way they are, and you don't need to put all the number bars there. The thing is, what is this number? Well, if it's the number in between -2 and -4, we can kind of figure out that that is a -3. That, of course, is right on 4. Actually, we don't want that. We want our numbers to be -3 and 4 with an x in between. Sorry. And so now we must figure out what the symbols are, and the symbols will always go, if they're put together like this, it always points to the left. In other words, less than, greater than will always set up like this. And so what happens is, because this is open, there's no symbol. Because there's an open, I'm sorry, not no symbol, no line. So both of those will be open circle symbols pointing to the left for your AND situation. Alright. If you see something like this, again, this is a OR situation, which you want to make sure you understand. This is OR. The first thing you want to do is understand what the symbol is, and the way you get the symbol, the easiest way to cheat for this symbol is to highlight the arrow. Notice that when you highlight this arrow, that is the symbol you will use. Because that is an open circle, I leave it alone. Because I see that there are two portions, this is OR, which means now I put this down, and the other number, which is actually 1, not 2. I highlight the arrow, or kind of focus only on the arrow, which means that this is the symbol that comes down, but because it's closed, we need a line under it. And that is all you have to do. Again, x is less than -2, which is right, or x is greater than or equal to 1. Again, if you ever have arrows and you want to make sure you get the right symbol, focus on the tip of the arrow and use that sign for that number. And then C is, again, this looks like an AND, so you're going to have a negative or a 3 here and a 6 over here with an x in the middle. The symbol will always go this way. Because that is closed, this one gets a line under it. Because that's open, this stays the same, and that's really all you have to do. So keep that in mind as you work. Finish the quiz. Ask questions on whatever you need to ask questions on, but again, go back and start fixing some of your things. We are getting down to the deadline on your Math XL, and any grade that you have that is not where you want it this Friday is going to stay there, so you might want to make sure that you are fixing those things. Good luck.